what I see the 21st century as being the kind of age of humachines, where we reach that point where it seems to be possible to humanize all machines and mechanize all humans and indeed all life forms to a point where it's no longer possible to tell the difference between humans and technology.
Welcome to For Humanity, an AI Risk podcast, episode number 53, Human Augmentation Incoming, the Coming Age of Humachines. I'm John Sherman, your host. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm a dad in Baltimore who believes the frontier AI labs like OpenAI when they publicly admit that their technology has the power to kill my kids, your kids, and all other life on Earth, that they don't understand how to control their technology, that they don't understand how their technology works, and that the moment in time when AI becomes smarter than humans, the point in time after which we truly don't know what happens next, will be here within the next few months or years. I believe the thousands of leading academic researchers, industry insiders, and AI safety experts, including the founding father of AI, Sir Geoffrey Hinton, a 2024 Nobel Prize laureate. And so I'm on a mission to wake up the world to the most important cause in human history, the threat of AI risk. I'm using storytelling and persuasion skills I honed over the last 25 years working in journalism, then advertising and marketing to explore the most important story ever told in the desperate hope that you will help me spread the word. Welcome to year 2 of For Humanity. This is the first show of our second year, and I have lots of big changes to announce. In 1 year, we built a base of high-quality content exploring all aspects of AI risk, more than 50 shows, an hour long each. In year 2, we're going to have one goal now: wake up the world. For Humanity is the AI risk podcast for the general public. No tech background required. This podcast is solely about the threat of human extinction from artificial intelligence. Please, I need you. Hit like, share, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment. We have a really interesting interview coming up for you in just a bit with Michael Harvey, the author of The Age of Humachines, Big Tech and the Battle for Humanity's Future. After the interview, some big announcements about plans for year 2 of For Humanity. I'm switching some things up, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I have a wild plan designed to draw a lot more of the general public to this YouTube channel that I am excited to tell you about. I have a really big interview booked for the next show that I'm super excited to tell you about, but first, a few quick things. So, yet another warning shot from OpenAI's Safety is a Joke world. The head of OpenAI's AGI Readiness Department. What a job title. AGI Readiness Department. Miles Brundage is his name. He has left the company citing concerns, over, shocker, lack of safety. He is the latest of many. This follows Dario Amodei, Ilya Sutskever, Jan Leakey, and many, many others who worked at OpenAI on safety and left because it wasn't working. It wasn't safe enough, not nearly. Miles Brundage went on Hard Fork, the New York Times tech podcast, to talk about why he left. I'm going to play a bit of it, but first, I have a note on Hard Fork. The hosts Kevin Roos and Casey Newton have a great show, truly, about all kinds of fun and interesting tech things. It has a light and fun tone. Here's my problem, though. AI risk is not light and fun. But these two cover AI risk like it's a new Snapchat filter release.
My position is that it would be premature to slam the brakes, but we should be installing some brakes, and right now there are no brakes.
Well, Casey, it's another day ending in Y, so another high-ranking leader has left OpenAI.
Kevin, this hasn't happened since yesterday.
Yeah, it probably won't happen again until tomorrow.
Oh my God. This is so crazy.
This is not just one of many senior leaders who have left OpenAI this year, but it is someone who's directly in charge of this thing called AGI readiness.
Yeah, which is an effort at the company to ensure that as it builds ever more powerful forms of artificial intelligence, it's able to release those safely, make sure that society captures the benefits, and that they mitigate any risks. But as you know, Kevin, the real story of this team and its predecessors at OpenAI has been one of real chaos over the past couple of years, right? This team is continually reorganized. It keeps getting different names. People keep quitting it. Some of them have started their own AI companies. And so we've had a lot of questions about what is it actually like inside this company right now? How is it changing? And how does that impact OpenAI's efforts to try to build safe superintelligence?
The announcement that Miles made that he was leaving OpenAI attracted a lot of attention. He's been a very vocal and prominent person, calling attention to some of the risks of these systems. But he also, in the process of leaving, said that he does not believe that OpenAI or any other frontier AI lab is ready for AGI, and that he also does not believe that society at large is ready for AGI. And that caught a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, it's when somebody who has been working on this project so hard for so long is saying that openly, it does raise questions about what they're seeing that the rest of us can't because we don't work there.
Yeah. So we asked Miles to talk with us this week about his decision to leave OpenAI and why he is choosing to pursue an independent research path, but also about some of the things that he saw and experienced while at the company that made him feel like neither OpenAI or the world at large is ready for what's coming.
Now, something to know about Miles is that while he's left OpenAI, OpenAI has offered to support his new efforts financially. And so I think that does affect the nature of what he can tell us, and it may prevent him from telling us certain things that we wish he would. So you may hear a little bit of hesitation in his voice.
And I think the trend that we've observed over the past year or two is that as these systems get more powerful, as they get more agentic, as they start to be able to do things like use computers, the urgency coming out of the big AI companies of people saying, you guys don't understand, this stuff is all happening much sooner than you think, has only increased. And I think this is an issue that is often taken less seriously by people outside the industry than people who are inside it working on this technology.
Yes, even though it could have some real effect in your life, including when you might be able to retire, which is something Kevin and I think about constantly.
Do you think about that constantly?
I'm so tired, Kevin.
Heard a pattern of people leaving OpenAI in the past year with concerns about the company's sort of commercial emphasis kind of overtaking the safety mission. Was that part of your decision here, is that you feel like OpenAI specifically was not going about things in a safe way?
So, I mean, it wasn't so much about OpenAI specifically, although obviously like my perspective on what the gaps are in the industry are informed by my experiences at OpenAI, but I'm pretty confident that there's no other lab that is totally on top of things. And, if you read what people are saying, they're not saying that they're on top of things. So that kind of crazy situation of like really fast progress plus the people who know the most saying that we're not ready is kind of my focus. It can operate the mouse and keyboard. It can, even look like a human in a video chat and so forth. I think people should be thinking about what that means. Governments should be thinking about what that means in terms of, sectors to tax and education to invest in. And, what is even the point of education in a world in which, some of the jobs that are kind of remaining and, there are going to be new ones, to be clear. I'm not saying, all jobs are going to disappear, but it'll be disruptive and people need to think ahead about what does this mean in terms of, the purpose of education? Is it to kind of, is it about kind of training people to be good citizens? Is it about, having people understand the world if it's not preparing for jobs that's going to be really hard to, skate where that puck is going?
Yeah.
I'm curious how you would, as you look across the landscape of the big labs that are building foundation models, how would you grade the industry to date on safely building AI systems? How do you think it's doing?
I think it's hard to grade the industry in isolation from, what incentives are being set by policymakers. So I think there are a lot of companies that are kind of doing their best within the environment that they're in, which is kind of very cutthroat competition and relatively little guidance other than, some voluntary commitments that they made that are, often somewhat vague, as well as like some kind of regulation looming on the horizon in the EU, but the details are TBD. So I think that, there is good work happening, and there's more transparency than there was a couple of years ago in terms of, here are the tests that we did, and here are the evaluations of these risks. But I would say it's also clear, if you kind of read, what these companies are saying, that in some areas they're falling behind. They're not solving all the problems that they know about. And I think that's a sign that this is kind of a, in some respects, out of control competitive situation.
This dude, Miles Brundage, is saying very, very serious stuff. It would help a whole lot if the hosts of Hard Fork talked about AI risk in an appropriate tone. And it's not just the OpenAI safety leaders who are noticing what's going on. The looming AGI future, where the default is catastrophic for humans, is something more and more people are talking about. Here's film director James Cameron in a recent video from the awesome Twitter account Sarnik.
How far out is AGI? A year? 5 years? Maybe 10? That's your real ticking time bomb. Whenever it arrives, you're going to have a machine consciousness with an ego, a sense of self, possibly as smart as us or smarter, certainly able to think faster and more precisely in many ways, and with unlimited growth potential, because self-improving code writing AGI leads inevitably to superintelligence. How long before you're forced to confront attaching that intelligence to a weapon system? I'd say about 10 minutes after an adversary does a devastating sneak attack on you. So you have a consciousness that's much smarter and faster than you, controlling weapon systems. We could follow Asimov and teach it that human life is absolutely sacred and above all other considerations. But even within the religious and social systems that say that, including the largely Christian US, we break that rule every day. Police using lethal force, warfighters in combat, capital punishment. And if you did insist on that principle of alignment, you couldn't connect an AGI to a weapon system. In which case, in the big AI war that's coming, you're going to face a powerful and less moral adversary with one hand tied behind your back. And you'd get your ass kicked and have huge losses, and then you'd remove that constraint pretty darn quick. So it becomes our superintelligence against their superintelligence.
Hey, James, please tell all your rich and famous friends, if you think nation-state AGI warfare is bad, please imagine humans versus AGI. That sounds like a very short battle. Your friends' looks and money transformed into repurposed atoms at the whim of AGI won't do them much good. Next, cool new resource alert. For Humanity is a podcast that in 2024 became a part of a growing community of people who are AI risk aware and possessed with spreading the word. My friend Liron Shapira does an amazing job picking apart different people's detailed, sometimes technical objections to the case against AI risk on his podcast, Doom Debates. Today, I want to point you to a new resource, a new partner in this fight, a new friend of mine, and someone who I think is going to prove a very capable ally in this fight. The website, Twitter, and YouTube account are lethalintelligence.ai, link in the show notes. And my new friend Michael, who is from and lives in Greece, has been working very hard on videos and other AI risk content that's aimed at the general public, and it's well worth your time. Much more on lethalintelligence.ai in the coming weeks for sure. We're getting together in person these days. We have live in-person For Humanity community meetings on Zoom Thursday nights at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Link in the description. I would love to see you there. There's no big formal agenda. Just a time to hang out with people who carry the weight of being AI risk aware and build a little bit of community. We have now a fully formed and functioning nonprofit organization to fund For Humanity and other AI risk communications projects like it. It is called Dads Against AGI. If you want to get involved in that, we are forming that now. Email me at forhumanitypodcast@gmail.com. And you can now support what we are doing here by donating through a monthly subscription. This is a big deal. The subscription, in the description, you will see links for different monthly donation amounts that you can subscribe for. Any amount means a big deal. Let's see how many subscribers we can get here in just the first few weeks of having this working. I wish it didn't cost any money to attract eyeballs on YouTube, but unfortunately it does. So please hit the link and subscribe. Even if it's $10 a month, that is just 30 cents a day so that we don't all die. I'm giving this thing my heart and soul and a ton of my time. 30 cents a day or more from you to spread the alarm would mean a whole lot to me. Okay, so let's move on to our interview on what I think is a pretty gruesome but unavoidable awful thing coming for humanity very soon: the specter of human augmentation. I'm not talking about carrying a cell phone, which is certainly human augmentation. I'm talking about humans putting computers inside our bodies to make ourselves smarter and faster so we have a chance in hell at competing with coming AI models and then with AGI in whatever form that might take. So say your coworker walks in tomorrow with an implant that made them able to do your job 4 times faster and much better. Would you get an implant too? And oh yes, of course, his implant is hooked up to the open internet. It can write its own code. AI models run most of it. And don't worry, there's nothing to fear. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, I think that's coming sooner than any of us can imagine. So here is my interview with author Michael DB Harvey, author of the new book, The Age of Humachines.
As you can see, I'm in the dark. Dusk has fallen in London, but you're still in the daylight, I see.
Yeah, still in the daylight. I'm just across the way here in Baltimore, Maryland. Sort of next to DC.
Okay. Baltimore. Well, I feel I know it quite well from The Wire.
Yes. That is something this city has been running from for about 20 years.
Well,
it is certainly an accurate
as well as bad side, but yes.
Absolutely. For some reason, the crime film industry loves Baltimore and loves making shows here. And it is our, there's a lot of truth in it, but it is certainly a wonderful place, and I love living here. So you're not the first I've heard. Baltimore, The Wire.
Well, I've not been there, so I have to go from presentations up in it.
It's quite lovely. Yes, yeah, I think you'd be impressed. I think you'd find it nice. So we are here today to talk about human augmentation. That is certainly a subject of interest to me, and I think to our viewers and listeners. We talk all about AI existential risk here, right. And I think a stop on the way there is certainly human augmentation. You've written a book. So maybe just start out, Michael. Tell me a little bit about what drew you to this subject matter. What sort of brought you to it?
A bit more just about the podcast. I mean, is it mainly focused on existential risk, which is, or you're covering a wider range?
It's existential risk. Like, my mission with this podcast is to wake up the general public to the dangers of AI risk. Right. Existential risk, but I think certainly things, we cover all kinds of things like job loss and the specter of human augmentation. I think that is certainly a real thing we are all going to be really confronting in the next, few years, sooner than anyone can think. So, to me, it is a valuable part of this equation. And as we think about, how we could possibly coexist in a world with AGI, human augmentation is certainly a piece of that puzzle worth exploring. So tell me, Michael, how'd you get into this subject?
Well, I guess what I would say, John, is that the book, my new book, The Age of Humachines, it really comes from thinking about technology, the influence of technology. Way back in the 80s, I was involved in technology myself, doing the internet before the internet, in a sense. But I became quite disillusioned with the extent to which I felt technology could really change the way people related to one another, which is what really kind of turned me on. So I switched to psychology. I switched from trying to change the technology to trying to change the people, and worked a lot with major organizations, and particularly leaders. And the more I looked at the way in which leaders were anticipating the future, or not anticipating the future in a sense, particularly after the 2008 crash, the more I became concerned, first of all, with climate change. And my book is in a sense about climate change, about the environmental crisis, or at least it sets technology within this extraordinary crisis which we're facing. And too often, I think, once we start talking about technology, technologists and the whole ideology of technology, and of course its power and magical properties, draw us into only thinking about technology. And I think we have to look at, I think we're facing a technological crisis, but that crisis is taking place within the context of an environmental crisis as we head down what the head of the United Nations calls the road to climate hell. Perhaps 3 or 4 degrees more of global warming. So I'm very interested in the way in which big tech seems to offer a kind of solution to everything, which actually potentially makes the climate change crisis and every other every other crisis we face in the Anthropocene worse. It relegates nature to a very secondary position. It relegates nature almost to a position of something that can be mastered and controlled completely. And
almost like the will of man supplanting the will of nature overall.
Well, that's right, and that's a tradition that goes back at least to the beginning of the Western science revolution in the 1600s, where the revelation of people like Kepler was that the universe was, well, they didn't see it anymore as mysterious and ineffable and unchangeable. They began to see it as what a clock. And God was no longer something that you couldn't in any way question. God was just a very, very clever watchmaker. And in a sense, from that idea on that point onwards, we've been heading towards a position where everything in nature, including humans, all animal life, the planet, the biosphere, is just a very, very clever piece of machinery, which can be decoded by engineers, by physicists, by mathematicians, and now, of course, by computer scientists. You feel then that, given that essentially mechanical nature of nature, that everything can be reassembled and re-engineered in some kind of applied evolution. And the idea of that is kind of very worrying. I think it's ultimately that machines are superior to life forms. It's just a better, more superior way of organizing everything around energy and matter to have it as a machine, because of course a machine potentially lives forever. It can be fixed. It can be made to do whatever you like. And in that process, of course, nature, which was always seen as potentially something to be mastered, even enslaved, now reaches almost its apotheosis. And what I see the 21st century as being the kind of age of Humachines, where we reach that point where it seems to be possible to humanize all machines and mechanize all humans and indeed all life forms to a point where it's no longer possible to tell the difference between humans and technology.
Man, first question is, give me a timeline. Like, do you have a timeline where you believe human augmentation is going, my neighbor just got a literal implant.
Yeah.
How far away are we from that? My coworker just got an implant that makes them 50 IQ points smarter than me, and we have the same job. He'll probably be my boss soon.
Well,
how close are we?
Is that what they say, or is there evidence of that?
That's what they say, right? This is if you can make this thing work. Like, I have no idea. The closest thing I saw was a video the other day of a guy with the neural link playing a video game without his hands.
Yeah.
And that was,
well,
something.
Yes. Well, I think the timeline, I think it has to be deeply disputed. So, I mean, to some extent, the question is, how much is it technologically possible? How much is it medically, biologically possible? And how much, crucially, is it socially possible?
Yeah.
How much resistance are we actually going to put up to for this? And I think, in many ways, in a sense, we've reached the first phase of the age of humachines, which I think began conveniently enough in the year 2000, shortly after the dot-com boom, which suddenly forced all of these technology companies, Google above all, to focus much more on actually becoming profit-making, to integrate themselves into the capitalist system rather than being much more like scientific research project. And that's created a kind of intelligence explosion in many ways. So I think the question that we're now beginning to see, I think, the second age of humachines, which is starting now, and that's partially because of the development of generative AI, and that's woken up a lot of people to what has always been inherent in terms of the problems, the extinction risks, the danger of AI. But suddenly it starts to become quite real when you think of a whole range of basic human skills being automated and potentially taken over by machines. That's what I mean by the humanization of machines as they take over our skill.
Sure.
At the same time, what we're seeing for the first time really is regulation. We're beginning to see social media, AI, and so on. We're seeing that in the States. We're seeing that in the EU. We're seeing it in the UK as well, the online harms bill, for example. But the real question is, I guess, how far is that regulation going to be enacted? We're really just starting into, I think, the second age, which is going to see the intended acceleration of a huge range of what I call humachination projects, trying to fuse humans.
Sure.
And that's what the technology is. But the question is, how far will we allow that to happen? How far will we go, particularly in human augmentation, beyond what seems to be medically safe? And crucially, I think in terms of augmentation, it's a question of, do we go beyond what could be seen to be reparative work, like, for example, the Neuralink work, which where essentially these implants are helping people restore fairly mechanical functions which they've lost through injury and so on. But at what point do you go beyond that?
Right. I mean, I think to me, it seems like it's a pretty foregone conclusion that we're going to go on beyond repairing, that we're going to go into Superman territory is a foregone conclusion. If it's commercialized, if it's available, if it's not regulated, all that seems like it's going to happen. That will certainly happen. But a couple questions. One, people who sort of poo-poo a human augmented future will talk a lot about, well, your cell phone is human augmentation and we're already augmented. There's another school of thought from people who downplay AI risk who say that machines are our natural descendants and this is just the way time was going to take it anyway. And if it comes quicker, so be it. So to me, a machine is no more my descendant than a toaster oven is my descendant. And the augmentation we have today is entirely different from something that is implanted under the skin and is, melded with my biology. But so what are your perspectives on the idea that they're just our natural descendants, and that we already have augmentation?
Well, I think that's what's interesting in a sense about this potentially the second age of human machines. I think that's where it's pushed much, much further. I think we still have, if you like, biological integrity. We can still turn our smartphones off. Okay, it's difficult because they're so addictive and so much of our lives are created around them, but we can do it. And of course, there are still people, who live entirely without smartphones. Diminishing number, it's true, but it's perfectly possible to live what you might call a recognizable human life without not only smartphones, but without a whole range of technologies. And I think the point about humachination, about reducing the difference between humans and technology, is the big tech and transhumanists and others, want to make that impossible, to make it absolutely impossible to really think of a life being possible without these kind of augmentations, without these implants, which go well beyond electrodes in the brain. I mean, that is just the beginning of what Musk wants to do, particularly Ray Kurzweil, who's been, probably the best known proponent of this idea that ultimately, superintelligence means, or one aspect of superintelligence is merging with AI, and he literally means putting enough computerization into the brain so that ultimately only 99%, I think, or something like 1% of biological entity remain in the brain. And then, of course, as you're aware, it goes well beyond that. It's a replacement of basically every organ in the body, and artificial organs, yes, already exist. It's a growing industry. Artificial heart, artificial liver, artificial blood, sexual organs, possibly. So you're already looking at a situation which sounds as though, well, yes, that could have advantages in terms of living for much longer. And of course, the whole idea of augmentation, indeed the whole idea and project which hangs over all of humachination, is living longer and potentially living forever. That is part of the godlike mission.
Right. What's standing in the way? Like what I get, there's technological barriers, right? Like the tech in the next 5-10 years in these areas is going to make massive jumps, I can only imagine. But like, other than that, are there any regulations currently about sticking computers in your body?
Well, I mean, basically what Neuralink and other BCI firms have done is it's got FDA approval for that. But there are limits, which in some ways I think is not surprising that it happened as quickly as that. But yes, there are limitations. There is still a bioethical wall which exists, which, for example, prevents human cloning, which prevents genetic engineering, which designer children, which is also very much integrally part of this whole idea of humachination. And people will argue, some eminent scientists, moral philosophers even will say, look, if you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on your child's education in order to give them, a better chance in life.
Right. Why not do it on their genetics?
Exactly. Now, again, to the extent to which that's possible, well, again, scientifically, you'd have to say it involves a huge amount of experimentation. And by experimentation, I mean, actually operating on real people. Now, if you remember that there was a case, I think 2018 in China, where twins were operated, were actually genetically engineered to prevent them from being affected by HIV, and that was completely against the law. The guy went to prison, although he's out now, and he's saying next time it will be better. But we still have that kind of regulation there. There is still the kind of war. And of course, what you have to understand is you start playing around with the human genome and affect one area, and no one knows how that's going to work out for other areas of the genome. And we don't know, these twins,
right?
May end up with all sorts of problems. And you've got to do countless experiments. You've got to, over generations, really, before you really have any idea what's going on. So I think there are very, very strong medical reasons for keeping the regulatory war steady. But as you say, there will be a lot of people who say, why would you do that? Why? It's almost against the spirit of capitalism, and that in
right. And I'm curious about
a lot of the time, a sense that
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, like, the case for, I'm the parent, and we're going to have a kid, and we want to give this kid the best future possible. We can pay to give them good nutrition. We'll pay for good food during the pregnancy. And that's a way that, we'll maybe go through some courses that we can afford, or something that will elevate us beyond someone who couldn't, or whatever. There's all these things people can do to sort of give their kid a better future, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you said, give my kid, make my kid super great looking and have an IQ 50 points higher than everybody else that's their age, and, they're 6'5" or whatever it is, whatever the optimizing is for, that's one thing. It's another thing if you're saying, I want to remove this disease or this birth defect or this other thing, and that's such a fine line there where you are, sort of fixing small minuses versus adding small or large pluses.
Well, I think in a way, I mean, those people who advocate this, and there are various moral philosophers, Julian Savulescu, for example, Peter Singer, have written a paper on this, and they see a progression from what you're starting about. You started talking about, genetic engineering to prevent certain inherited diseases, or hemophilia, Down syndrome, or so on. Now, that to me, it's deeply problematic, and it's something that, the idea that you suddenly remove from the human race all of these diverse types of personality. I mean, it's, for example, Down syndrome's parents violently object to this. The idea that, because Down syndrome, a wonderful personality, why would you suddenly do that? But to some people, that just seems to be illogical. And you start with that, you move on, towards other types of preventable disease, and then by that time, the Trojan horse is already so kind of established within medicine and indeed the medical business that you start to go on to much more complex and problematic areas, like actually improving intelligence or changing personality. And I think, John, what's important to realize throughout all of this is that there is this assumption that basically human beings are machines. It comes back to that 16th century idea of clockwork, and And philosophers like Thomas Hobbes or Descartes at that time explicitly said, the brain is basically like a calculating machine. The body is just a sophisticated machine with pulleys and levers and so on. And this has finally come to fruition in a sense, or at least there seems to be a lot more evidence behind this for a whole generation of computer scientists. And what we've got to remember is one of the big things that's happened over the past 50 years or so is the kind of invention of computer science. And almost all of the big tech titans who I examine in my book, the Musks and Zuckerberg and so on, all of those that generation, they've all studied computer science, and they started off actually playing with computers from an incredibly early age, playing video games and also reading science fiction. So there's this whole sense that for them, in this kind of tunnel vision of a sort of mechanized world where everything can be engineered, everything can be datafied, everything can be controlled. And I think that's a completely wrong view of what a human being is. The human brain isn't a computer. It's far more complex. In fact, it's so complex, being the most complex living thing in the universe, and it is a living thing. We really understand comparatively little about it. And there are, for example, zoologists who will say it could probably be to the end of the century until we actually understand how the brains of tiny worms actually work, because they are so incredibly complex. And all the things we understand. So it's very easy to say, there's lots of stuff whirring around in the brain, and it's a bit like connectionism and the various neurons. It's not like a computer. And again, if you look at the body isn't just this sort of piece of hardware being run by the brain. The heart, for example, has kind of elements of connections to the nervous system. So in some ways, it kind of thinks. We know this when we say, all of this heart stopping or heart rendering. There's an element in which the heart is extremely important. The guts are important. All of those things kind of work together in an incredibly complex way.
Sure.
So when you start to mess around with any of this, the dangers are extraordinary.
Do you believe that AI itself will help reveal some of these truths, like what's really going on? Does it have that power, as they say?
Well, I think it. I think it can help. There's no doubt that there's huge areas in terms of medical technology in medicine where AI can help. But again, I think you always have to think about what's the kind of social context of this. What's the social? What's the ecological context?
Yeah.
What's the democratic context? Because this is really why, podcasts like this are so valuable. We're not thinking widely enough about who it is that should be actually controlling all this, who should be making decisions about, whether we want to go off into this incredibly dangerous, brave new world. And that's the people. Because potentially so many of these developments, are irreversible. It's once you get, even if it's only a small group of people, which I think it almost certainly will be, who start off with this, that suddenly creates a huge amount of disturbance to the whole system, especially if they do end up in some ways to the advantage. You've created potentially a master race before you even know what you've done. So I think so much of it comes down to democracy. How do ordinary people get a chance to make?
Sure. And so here's a question about that.
Yeah.
Like, you see this radically different future. I see this radically different future. I think we're probably, if you took 100 people, the 2 out of the 100 who would be seeing this, and the other 98 would think that tomorrow is going to look very much like today. What is your perspective on the reason all of these issues, augmentation, AI risk, remain so siloed in the corner of the global discussion and have not taken their rightful place as the most important issues ever?
Well, I think one reason is so much of this new technology is seen to be the solution to everything. It's fundamentally integrated now into capitalism, so that it's very, very hard to think of any kind of progress for economies, particularly the American economy, of any economy, without constantly developing technology. That seems to be the only way in which it's possible to create the kind of infinite economic growth which our current world system requires, even though we are living on a finite planet. And that's an incredibly dangerous and indeed paradoxical proposition. But I think that's part of it. Capitalism just, look at the stock market. Where is the capital? Where is the money? Where are these individuals who, now are centibillionaires? There's a track on which, Elon Musk, I think, in a few years will be a trillionaire. So, what do you do if you really start challenging all of this? A lot of people are making a lot of money out of it. A lot of politicians are hanging on the coattails because that's the only way in which they see some kind of economic growth. But I think you also have to think, John, that we have this thing which I call the ideology of technologism, which is somehow that, again, which goes back through the Industrial Revolution, the Western Science Revolution, which basically says, humanity and technology are one in a sense, or the progress of humanity equals progress of technology. And of course, we can look at all sorts of things which have enormously improved, and the smartphone is one of them, and all sorts of other things. But we can also look at many other aspects of life on Earth today, which haven't improved. Which indeed, there's an awful lot of unfinished business in terms of poverty, increasing inequality, war, conflict. Just have a look at the headlines of the news today. I mean, there is so much there that we haven't solved. That it's easy maybe to think that technology is the solution, when in many cases you have to say it's part of the problem. It's part of the problem, I think. Because we go back a long way, which is like the sort of story of Prometheus in a way which I use, and I sort of interpret Prometheus as we stole fire from the gods. Now, some people say he stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, but I think he did it more because he wanted to be a god himself. Which was part of his plan. So there was.
Sounds familiar.
And it's always been.
Yeah.
If you want to either stay at the top of the social pyramid, the hierarchy which has existed now for 5,000 or 6,000 years, which is almost the meaning of civilization. It's all in the sense of an elite at the top and a kind of pyramid structure. If you want to stay at the top, then you need to either invent or claim the new technology, whatever it is, from military technology, civil technology, and so on, agriculture. And if you want to get to the top rapidly, then you invent a new technology. So, I mean, that I think is so much of the problem. It's a sort of circular process. The people who are most powerful, most influential, are the people who own this technology, who control it, who to some extent understand it, or at least claim they understand it, who are able to project a whole kind of ideology around things like, the brain is just a computer, and myths like that, which seem to me
perpetual growth, always, forever.
So, and I think that's the problem, and I think that it is a big question. I think big question is, can we see an alternative? And I think my book is
Yeah.
It is not simply about a critique of big tech and where we're going, because I think we are on the road to some kind of dystopia with technology. I think that's much more likely where the augmentation ends up, actually, is probably
Totally.
in a mess on the lab floor, but at the same time, the power of new technology in the hands of this tiny elite will be so great, particularly with the automation of jobs. I mean, that's in a sense where the real shit just get it done.
Sure. So let me ask you this, if I can, Michael. So the first time that I heard about human augmentation was when I was reading Eliezer Yudkowsky's writings about it. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he talks. It's a grim version of human augmentation. He speaks to a time, it could be 5, 10, 12 years from now, when some sort of weak AGI is created. It's not, for whatever reason, strong enough to kill us all right away.
Yeah.
So we are coexisting with AGI, weak AGI. The pressure on humanity to compete intellectually with this AGI is so much that as the AGI is improving, humans feel like they must put physical implants inside their bodies to compete, to have a chance to compete with this thing that is getting smarter, while we stay the same, right? So we have to get smarter too. So he talks to a period of time, maybe 5 years from now, when governments, medical institutions are seeking human volunteers, hundreds of thousands of them, to basically go into a chop shop and start throwing stuff at the wall. Yeah. And we don't have human augments that work, but we have some that might. Yeah. And so we just start putting them in people, and these people get a couple $1 million if they don't die after a year of their implement or whatever. You know, they pay them to be the experiments, and we have this like live experiment going on throughout humanity, brutally sticking things in people's bodies. Probably 80% of it doesn't work, and they die or whatever it is. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I think the time scale is probably a bit too tight for me. I mean, I can imagine
that's good. I'll take that. That's
in a kind of a more fully fledged kind of dystopia, where the tech, what I call the techno scene, where the techno elite is totally in control of everything, through massive surveillance and so on. So, and of course is able to control the government, and so it would allow for these kind of development areas where there are no regulations whatsoever. I could see that happening. I think that's a possibility, but I think in a way, it's possibly closer to home. Interestingly, there was a report, a survey done not so long ago by PwC, where they asked people, ordinary people, would they be prepared to have brain or body augmentation if they thought it was going to improve their chances of getting a job. Now, well, I mean, when you think of it, the effect of AI, not necessarily AGI, but already what we have at the moment, is likely to be jobicide. It's likely to affect a massive amount of jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's liable, this scenario, which I think a lot of economists have worked on, that you get the sort of hollowing out of middling kind of jobs, and there's this almost this gap between the lovely jobs at the top, which are all about creativity and relationships and advanced kind of executive decision making, because those people are able to sort of rise above and still more intelligent than AI. And then you've got a lot of things which the more kind of the lousy jobs at the bottom, which already we have, warehouses and workers and delivery, and a lot of the things which actually AI finds quite difficult to do. the manual task, but surprisingly enough, is still quite difficult. And in those circumstances where you're desperate for a job, where you're competing with your cobot, you're competing with all of these AI systems which are constantly saying, this can be done, this job can be done in 5 minutes. Why are you spending 10 minutes on it? Or, why can't you do it at all? But you just have. In those circumstances, I think you might find people get very desperate. But again, it comes down to this question of legality. What is the government saying? What are democratically voters say? The scenario you seem to be talking about is, it is very much, I think, sort of dystopian science fiction and a completely unregulated universe where all sense of regulation is broken down, where there is no resistance. And I think so many of the answers to your questions are not really necessarily technological. They're social, they're political. What is the resistance?
Yeah.
In the same.
I have a question for you. Yeah, I was going to say, Michael, so here's one. If you could be assured that it would be medically safe, that you would have no medical issues from it, and let's just use the most simple thing. So I don't know if you saw recently the new Facebook glasses that Zuckerberg debuted. Yeah. And then I saw videos of people literally walking through a park. They have the glasses hooked up to an app and they're looking at faces, getting names and addresses and LinkedIn things. And, you see the person and you immediately can recall them, whatever. If you had that skill as a human natively, right? Instant recall of any stranger, full knowledge of who they are. You would be a superpower in business and whatever you wanted to do if you just had that one capability. If you could do it totally harmlessly, and I guess that's the unknown, right? But let's just theoretically, it's medically harmless. There are no butterfly effects from it medically, like physiologically. Would you do it?
Would I wear the glasses or?
It's internal. The glasses are the glasses are an implant. So the glasses went away and it's now subcutaneous. It's an implant in your temple.
Well, I mean, I don't want to dodge the question, but I think of course these things are incredibly tempting. But I think your hypothesis, the framing of it, is unrealistic. Because I don't think.
No doubt.
How would we know? How long would it actually take before we would realize it has no medical negative consequences?
Totally.
That could be a generation. But I also think there is the social aspect, and again, this comes down to a question to some extent of kind of individualism versus collectivism. What is good for the whole? And I think so much of this is really is based on an extreme kind of individualism, which I have to say, exists throughout the West, but it is probably stronger in the United States. I mean, after all, you have or had Ayn Rand, who is the most extreme kind of individualistic philosopher, who is many people say is basically the philosopher of Silicon Valley. And so I think a lot of this is posed in the sense of here is the individual on their own, kind of competing with the rest of the humanity or the rest of society to thrive, to get on top, stay on top. And I think so much of almost the appeal of these things is because we do think very, very individualistically. As Margaret Thatcher said, there's no such thing as a society. Yeah? Or Silicon Valley said no such thing as society, except, there's technology, there's individual. So I think that's part of the question. I mean, I don't want to sound, too moralistic about it, but I suppose I would have some sense of what are the consequences of this for other people, and the idea that I would just have this on my own as a skill, again, is a bit preposterous, isn't it? Because pretty quickly everyone else would do it. I would be competing.
Right.
And again, so I would be sort of part of some kind of potential kind of master race, a bit
yes.
like the billionaire titans, competing ferociously with each other, as the rest of humanity, certainly into income terms, disappears, and the pyramid becomes even steeper. And I think a good way of thinking about this is in terms of longevity, of this desire for immortality, which is so much part of the big tech ethos. And are you aware of the phrase deathism? Deathism,
No, tell me about it.
Used by people like Peter Thiel. It's a criticism of the idea that death is inevitable. So, in that sense, and I do think it's because these are people who think we can live, that the death in a way is not a tragedy, it's a scandal. That we shouldn't die. We should be able to live well beyond our natural lifespan of 120 years. There's one kind of aging guru who says the first person to live to be 1,000 years is already alive. So this idea of living forever, which is really what the ultimate of this augmentation. It's not simply short-term advantage. It's creating a body and a brain, that can live for hundreds of years and not get bored. I mean, that's part of the almost the appeal. Again, a very, very individualistic way of looking at it. And I don't know. One way of thinking about that again is Gulliver's Travels. So I don't know if you know Jonathan Swift's great satire, and in that he discovers an island called the Struldbrugs. And the Struldbrugs are immortals, but they're miserable, and they're miserable in part because they have lots of illnesses and so on, which maybe some of those have been cleared up. But the main reason is that at the age of 80, they're deprived of all their property, all of their kind of legal status, all of their money, and their jobs. And this seems to be very cruel. Well, why is this? But it says, well, what's the consequence? Otherwise, they would just maintain all the power, all the jobs. There would be nothing for anything else, anyone else in this society.
Yeah.
And this is something that never occurs, I think, to people. I've just been reading Ray Kurzweil's latest book, where he talks again about living forever and immortality, and he's determined to do that. And the only objections he could really come up against is, will you get bored? The inequality issue is simply waved away by saying, oh, well, it's like smartphones. Smartphones started as being something that the rich had, but gradually everyone else got it. Now, it is true of smartphones, but it's not true of many, many other technologies. It's not true of some very basic technologies, like, say, a decent house to live in, or enough food to live all comfortably.
Yeah.
Those things still haven't trickled down. But I think that's what we need to be thinking all the time, is what are the social ramifications of this? Are we simply...
Right. No, that's a crazy... that's such a crazy thing. Like the idea that Elon thinks he should be the premier industrialist for all time. There should never be another Elon. He'll be the forever Elon.
Well, exactly.
What madness is that?
Exactly. And when you think that these guys, for the most part, some of them are, in their 20s and 30s, but, Musk is I think, 53, early 50s. I mean, if he lives to be even as long as Rupert Murdoch as a hands-on executive, he's going to be running his technology conglomerates for the next 40 years. That's before you start looking at life expectancy.
With the overtime.
Zuckerberg is younger. Zuckerberg might even make it into the 21st century. And again,
so this is a lost thing. Like, these guys are trying to be the forever kings of the galaxy. Like, this is really what it is.
They're fantasy gods, like Prometheus. Being what he was, which is a titan, which is a pretty privileged kind of status, wasn't enough for him. He wanted to go the whole hog. He wanted to be a god. And I think this is the problem. In the end, it's not necessarily the technology. It's the people who own the top technology who are developing it. And they all suffer from, I think, what I call the machine mindset, which is an extraordinary kind of tunnel vision where everything is seen in terms of quantity, of math.
Growth rate, everything. Yeah.
Which contains, I think, potentially quite an antisocial element. I mean, at worst, it's psychopathic. And we do know that psychopaths tend to get into chief executive positions, 4 times more than the general population would suggest. But these people, whether they start as psychopaths, and Elon Musk had a pretty rough upbringing, or whether they develop that as they become more and more addicted to power. And certainly Zuckerberg, didn't seem to be a dictator, which is constantly being called now when he started out. But you get into it. So this dominator complex, so you call it a god, whatever it is, it's desire and need to stay at the top, and partially driven by greed for more power, or more of everything.
Sure.
And partially a fear of losing it all, because you have that kind of dynamic of constantly being chased by yes, lots of people who would do you down, who would take away perhaps everything. So that makes the intensity of what I call the law of more, which I think is not Moore's law, it's the law of more, which I think dominates the.
Yeah.
Whereas what we need, I think, is the law of enough. There's a sense of being able to say, with all of this technology, wow, we've made incredible progress. Whatever period you want to look at, the last 10 years, last 50 years, the last 200 years, we've got more than enough technology already to solve what I think are the crucial problems, which is really ultimately how we live together better and how we live together beautifully. And we know people are capable of doing that, but they're not capable of doing that if they're stuck in kind of social pyramids where inequality rules, and you constantly have to be doing what working 3 or 4 jobs just to survive.
Right. No, it's like to the forever growth is bad. It's like what your grandmother told you. Too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
Like,
becomes very bad.
This is
yes.
becomes very bad, right? It's not a secret.
That's where we could be going. That's
right. So, okay, couple questions. So I can think of a time where, let's say, there is some augmentation happening, and people talk of this time where maybe you have like augmented people gathering in the cities and doing their things, and then there's more naturalists sort of headed to the hills to live a more natural life without all that. What do you think about that? And then second question is it possible for those two worlds to coexist? Like, could the augmented superior allow the natural inferior to coexist, harmonically, or would this augmented naturally just take from the inferior whatever it wanted?
Well, in a way, you've kind of answered your own question when you're talking about sort of inferior and superior. And yes, I suppose, masters and slaves live together. You wouldn't necessarily say that they're particularly happy, or indeed, in any kind of social hierarchy. About that already. Some people have, huge amounts of power and wealth, and other people have very, very little. And yes, there can be a separation, but I think it's very hard to see how that kind of coexistence happens along our current trajectory. I mean, it's more like if we could. I think so much of this technology is kind of premature. I think if we could solve the problem, which we have already, which is kind of around the model I use, which is called SOUP, which is can we create a world which is sustainable, equitable, based around well-being, and well-being on a planet-wide basis, not some kind of huge inequality to be, global north.
Sure.
Global. So that seems to be the real challenge, and that's in a sense a much greater challenge for humanity than automating all of our skills or turning ourselves into cyborgs. That's the real. Now, if we crack that one, and we created a society which was genuinely much more equal, much more sustainable, because without sustainability, we're in for hellishness anyway. So any kind of bets on the future are completely compromised by that. If we could reach that level, then you might be able to say, well, let's experiment. If some people want to do this, some people would say, why if it ain't, if it ain't broke, why play around with that? Isn't there a danger? We go back to the old ways and we develop a superior race. But, who knows? It might be worth doing. At least you could have some kind of democratic vote, or what I call demotechnics.
Right.
Where genuinely the whole population is voted on new technology. And so, whatever happens, but at least you can say everyone has been made informed choices, and then you can see where it goes. But of course, that's not what we're looking at the moment. We're in a dog-eat-dog kind of world where technology is constantly being used, to increase your competitive power, to increase, your ability to win in a zero-sum game. Then, technology, it can only go, I think, in a way that makes, better for some and potentially worse for many others.
I think that's how they view it. And I think, honestly, if we had this world where Elon is king of the augmented city people and we have the unaugmented woods people trying to live a quiet life out in the woods, I 1000% believe Elon Musk would believe he knows what the woods people should be doing.
Well,
and he would march city people, augmented city people out to the woods to help those poor woods people, those dumb woods people who don't know what Elon knows, and he would organize their lives too.
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, I guess it's about colonialism, really, isn't it? When you think often the first colonialists are the missionaries in many cases who are out to, save the poor benighted heathens and show them the right way. So of course there could be that benevolent, or supposedly benevolent,
yes.
But also you might find there are quite a lot of resources out, natural resources in those woods, which could be useful. There are maybe human labor resources, which might also be useful in the techno scene, in the Musk world, and so on. And yes, I guess it's a possibility, but it's more likely there will be some kind of wall in between them. And we see various parts of the world where walls already exist, but they don't necessarily lead to terribly satisfactory forms of life for either side.
Sure. What if you had a crystal ball, or just sort of your sense of the, reasonably near future? What are the maybe one or two augmentations that you think will be the first things we see when it's like on the news? Look at this. This guy in Finland just got this, or what? Look at the first of its kind. These surgeons just put this thing in this guy.
I wouldn't bet. I wouldn't make a bet on that. I mean, I suppose. I suppose what's happening with Neuralink, what's happening with BCI, is probably where you might see something happening that perhaps goes beyond kind of working with certain kind of mechanical aspects of the brain. But I think you could see it in areas of artificial organs. Clearly, I guess the area which people like Kurzweil are almost relying most on is nanotechnology. The idea of sort of infinitely smaller robots building smaller and smaller robots, and then I mean, I'm sure progress will be made. Whether you'll ever get to the point which Kurzweil envisages, where literally the billions of these nano robots enter your bloodstream and constantly repair your body and monitor. I think is extremely unlikely. That's almost a fantasy. But I don't know. I mean, I suppose I would focus more on what we're more likely to see in the workplace, and ways in which various types of either digital or robotic systems are going to maybe improve things, or certainly I don't think the delivery worker in Amazon or elsewhere is likely to survive for that much longer. They're already more or less shunted around by robots. Amazon are investing heavily in humanoid robots, which have already been introduced into some of the US warehouses. Delivery drivers and that whole kind of area likely to be replaced more and more by drones and those types of things. So in terms of human augmentation, I still am maybe optimistic in thinking that people will resist it, both kind of at an individual level and at a societal level with regulations which will make it difficult or just illegal to do, and then that puts you in a completely different world. But at the same time, again, it depends how much we insist on saying enough is enough. It comes back down to that.
A huge issue for this, I think, is similar to the main issue with AI risk, is that if we're trying to get people super motivated about something they've never seen or conceived of, it's very, very hard. So, it's like if we're arguing against augments that don't currently exist, that is such a harder case than like, oh my God, they put augments in the kid next door and his head fell off. Like to fight against something that doesn't exist is such a challenge to motivate people around.
Well, I agree, but I think, in a sense, we're kind of for example, I think one of the problems with AGI is that too much it's being presented as more or less a known, which I don't know if you see. DeepMind have developed these kind of 5 stages where we move towards AGI. And so we're already level 1. Emerging, which is kind of plausible in the sense that ChatGPT is superior to humans in a lot of areas. I don't know how good you are at musical composition or
I haven't read all the books
or software programming and so on, but already in some respects a certain level of superhuman intelligence has been achieved there, and that's, I think, much more worrying really than maybe we've thought about. And in the book I take a slightly critical view of generative AI because it's not AGI, but it's significant, and the effect it's going to have in the workplace, I think, it's a whole level of human skills is incredible. But what DeepMind are doing, I think, in a rather clever way, is suggesting this progress up to level 5 is a kind of no. And I think people who actually are more, I think, informed about artificial intelligence and human intelligence, who see it as fundamentally embodied. How can you have anything like human intelligence unless it's in a body, and not any body, but this unique body, your body, my body, which has its unique history and cultural social framework? People like that, some of them say AGI is never possible, or maybe they think in terms of 50 years, 100 years. So for them, I think AGI is more like a known unknown. But to me, AGI is an unknown unknown. We really don't know anything about it. we don't have any idea what it actually will be about. We would have no way of understanding it. We'd have no way of questioning it or challenging it. We'd have no way, in theory, principle, it could already have happened. Nobody's bothered to inform us because, and everything about it then would be completely incomprehensible. The idea that it would be benevolent, well, which of course is the fundamental assumption of most systems, that it will sort of take pity on us and will maybe feel great to be created by us. I think much more likely to think of the dad as maybe a problem in an Oedipus style, something to kill the dad, kill all those people who created. Who knows? Benevolence is, in a sense, something that we impose on it, which is completely irrelevant, which may be something that simply doesn't compute.
Absolutely.
What we might take to be malevolence, again, it surely will be malevolent in terms of its the results of maybe huge swathes of humanity, or maybe all of humanity being wiped out or replaced, or even that we might be wrong to think of that as malevolent, though it would certainly feel malevolent. It's just
right.
So we don't know how it would solve the problems that it's solving. What's the point? We wouldn't even know what the problems are. Almost certainly, the problems are completely different. And again, it's this idea of a kind of paradigm shift. And we do know this from physics, from the kind of heartland, if you like, of computer science, in the way in which Newton's world at the end of the 19th century had been very, very useful for, hundreds of years. But everyone was trapped in this world where they knew there were problems they couldn't solve in astronomy at time and so on. But the framework of Newton kept them locked in that world. And so it took something as apparently crazy as relativity theory to actually solve some of those existing problems, to create new problems. And then, lo and behold, quantum mechanics came along, which Einstein thought was mad. But again, you're creating a different paradigm, and I think that's important in two ways. Certainly, say AGI, we don't know anything about what that paradigm would be, and that's what makes it so incredibly dangerous. It's the actual sort of predictions around this. When you hear people say, "Oh, AI experts say there's 16% that it will go rogue," that's meaningless. It's somewhere between.
Right. No, it's all just emotional, just, taking...
Naught at 100%. But I think it's also
right
that we need a new paradigm to get ourselves out of this problem. Because otherwise, I think we are locked into technologies. We're locked into this machine supremacism. And if we can't find something radically alternative, we're going to get dragged along. And probably augmentation at some stage is going to happen, because there are enough people who are messianically convinced that it's possible, and maybe who are prepared to sacrifice themselves, or better, prepared to sacrifice other people. There may well be many people, if you think of the kind of people who, these days, have to sell their organs, or do choose to sell their organs for money, or, how many people would be prepared to do that for their family, if as you say, they got $1 million, or perhaps even quite a bit less.
Yeah.
So I mean, these things could happen, but we have to be thinking in different terms, and we have to be asking some of those very, very meaningful and pertinent questions you're asking in a different way. What kind of society do we want that will control technology? And of course, if we can control it, we can use it then to our benefit.
Sure. Okay. Michael, this is so fascinating. I could talk to you about this forever, but I need to bring it home here. So I always like to end on something optimistic, something positive, something that gives you hope. So as you look at this coming world of human augmentation, what gives you hope?
Well, I think what gives me hope is that the more knowledge that we have about what the intentionality is behind big tech, what the kind of journey they're on in terms of humachination, of merging humans and machines. And I think also the way in which this is integrated in what I call onto-capitalism, the phase we are really now in capitalism, which is ontological, where capitalism is now committed to changing the fundamental meaning of being human. I think the more that we see that intentionality as in a sense being more important than actual sort of stepping stones along the way to augmentation, because that's practical. But I think if you want to understand what the future is like and where we're headed, you need to understand people's direction of travel and the kind of philosophy. So I think the more we expose the human-machine philosophy, where they want to go, the dangers of this, the absurdities of talking about AGI at all.
Yes.
And I think the more we actually move towards pausing, for example, AI, I think we've already gone far enough. I think, that's what I know I think you had a podcast, featuring the pause AI movement, which I hadn't heard about until recently, which I think is very, very encouraging. People are beginning to say that, because I say that in my book, but I felt, hey, I'm out of limb here. But it's very, very encouraging that there are more and more people who are, in a sense, thinking the unthinkable. But why? It's perfectly thinkable. We're still at a relatively early stage where we can pause, and then we move to prospective regulation. We start trying to anticipate the future, again, using the very, very clear idea we have of where big tech wants to be going. And then saying, we don't, there has to be a very, very clear safety route, absolutely demonstrable, if any of these pathways are allowed. And I think AGI potentially is something we should ban permanently, because I don't see, by definition, how it could ever be, something we could rely on. It could only be the wildest hunt in the dark. It's just going off the flying, driving off the cliff and hoping that somehow the supposed flying wings of the car actually do.
Well, sprout wings on the car.
Exactly. It's as crazy as that. And I also think that I am optimistic about, and this sometimes, takes a bit of effort, but I think, about humanity and about our ability to in a sense, take pride in who we are and what we can be. Because I think underneath so much of this humachination is a kind of misogyny. It is a sense that, humans aren't really up to very much, that we need these machines to solve all the problems that supposedly we can't solve. The human bodies, which, after all, are amazing. If you think about them, what they can do, just think, I don't know, an Olympics, just think of the kind of, physics. That's one aspect of the kinetic intelligence. So, human beings are extraordinary. We need to take pride in that, what we can do with relatively low levels of technology, and start having the confidence to then say, let's make technology our servant, rather than allowing it to become our master, or more to the point, the owners of that technology, because the technology, doesn't have a will of its own. But we're up against a Promethean techno elite that is determined to go as far as it possibly can in taking forward the idea of human fusion and onto capitalism. And that's, I think, what we have to stop. I think we can do it, but it's going to take almighty effort, and the resistance has to start now. And I think it starts over the next, 25 years, but the next 5 years, are going to be crucial.
I love it. Michael, welcome to the Resistance.
Welcome. Happy to be on board.
I want to say my personal answer is no. I would never accept digital implanted augmentation. But if I'm being fully honest, I can't say that I'm sure. It's not out of the question, I guess. Very hard to imagine. I would have to be very desperate, I think. Anywho, on to brighter topics. Let's talk about the future of this YouTube channel and this community. So, for 52 weeks with no break, I made a trailer and a long version of the video every week. It didn't start out with that commitment to do it every week. It just sort of grew organically. My logic was we don't have enough viewers. We're running out of time. How can this be the week to stop the drumbeat? But now in year 2, I have a new plan. It's going to give me a little bit of a break in my life, give me also a chance to focus on Dads Against AGI, the nonprofit. It's bold, it's kind of wild, and it might not work, but it might just break through to the general public. People who are never searching for AI risk content or not even thinking about AI risk at all. So for year 2, I'm going to make one big show every 2 weeks. It will have at least one big interview in it. That is my commitment. But I have another commitment. I'm going to make a short vertical video for YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram every single day. 365 days. Here we go. I'm excited about it. But that's not the trick to it. See, I have a dashboard in my YouTube ad vendor portal. Anytime a day, I can see the top trending searches on YouTube, the world's video search engine. These are the things that the general public wants to know most about. So I'm going to tell them. Every day, I will pick one trending topic. It might be sports, might be pop culture, might be world events, might be weather, might be politics, whatever is trending big. And that is the thing I will start and finish the video talking about. But in between, in each video, I will bake in the 3 things every normal, unaware person needs to know about AI technology. The AI labs admit their technology can kill us all. They don't know how to control it. They don't understand how it works. 1, 2, 3. So it'll be the trend plus the 3 basics of AI risk every single day for a year. My plan is to rope in the public through their unaligned social media algorithms and use the algorithms to bring them here to us at For Humanity. The plan will likely evolve throughout the year, but that is the basic idea. I think it's going to be fun. Okay, one final reminder. Since it just happened, you can now support For Humanity with a monthly subscription. Please do this. Please, please do. This link's in the show notes. It would be so inspiring to see a whole bunch of you sign up in the first weeks. All right, lastly, my friends, I have got a really awesome way to end the show this week. As you know, in these dark times, we don't know how long we have to live. So we live every day like it could be our last, and we end every show with something we call a celebration of life, just something that makes us thrilled to be alive. This week, a very strong contender for who I personally believe is the greatest voice alive on the planet. I don't throw that around lightly. This dude is unreal. You've likely heard a song or two of his before, but I doubt you've seen this. So Paolo Nutini, the Scotsman with the Italian name and the voice, is an unbelievably talented artist. I was looking up for the right Paolo video to show you, and holy shit, I found a video from YouTube from 2006 with a 17-year-old Paolo Nutini singing with his buddies playing. This is the unmatched Paolo Nutini at 17 years old singing his hit, Last Request.
This is it, and the helicopters, they were a good, interesting sound effect. This is Last Request, okay? Thanks, guys. 2, 3, 4. Slow down, lie down, remember it's just you and me. Don't sell out, bow out, remember how this used to be. I just want you closer, is that alright? Baby, let's get closer to Grant my last request and just let me hold you. And don't shrug your shoulders. Lay down beside me. Sure, I can accept that we're going nowhere, but one last time, let's go there. Lay down beside me. Oh, and I found that I'm bound to wander down that one-way road. Oh, and I realize all about your lies, and I'm no wiser than the fool that I was before. I just want you closer. Is that alright? Baby, let's get closer tonight. Grant my last request and just let me hold you. And don't shrug your shoulders. Lay down beside me. Sure, I can accept that we're going nowhere. Oh, one last time, let's go there. Lay down beside me. Oh, baby, baby, baby. Tell me how can this be wrong? Grant my last request and just let me hold you. Don't shrug your shoulders. Lay down beside me, and sure I can accept that we're going nowhere, but one last time, let's go there. Lay down beside me. Grant my last request and just let me hold you. Don't shrug your shoulders. Lay down beside me, and sure I can accept that we're going nowhere, but one last time, let's go there. Oh, lay down beside me. Thank you all very much. Good afternoon.
I mean, holy shit. Did you see that voice? I just can't. Did you see how something happened with the mic in the middle, and then they were laughing, and then it looked like it came back? It felt like the mic like fell over, or like popped back up. Something happened in the grass. I don't know. For about 40 seconds, the sound got a little weird there. Okay, listen, I'm not trying to be a DJ on this show, but I have a second treat for you here today. While I was looking for that on YouTube, I found a second recording from that same recording session out there in the park or wherever the hell they are in 2006. I'm going to give you two songs because it's just so damn good. Here's Paolo Nutini again at 17 singing another great hit. This song is called Loving You.
I'm going to play one more song for you guys now. Thanks for listening and watching if you've got it. And this is called Loving You. So here we go. Hope you enjoy it. Oh, Lord, oh. Back up loneliness and hello tenderness. I've been waiting for your call for so long. And it must have been hard just to follow your soul, to stick to the road that your heart wants you to go. And as you slide through the door with your morals on your sleeve, and I think it's time for all those morals to leave. So let's get down and freaky, baby. Let's get restless, baby. Come on, get crazy with me. And I say, when you're loving me, I am loving you. And I love the prowess and the things that you do. And it's your flawless soul that bleeds my stone. And when you're loving me, I'm loving you. And that's when we've got it going on. On and on and on and on. So many people think we've got it wrong. They all try to break us, but we won't play along. So let's get down and dirty, baby. Let's get restless, baby. Come on, get crazy with me. And I say, when you're loving me, I am loving you. And I love the prowess and the things that you do. And it's your flawless soul that bleeds my stone. And when you're loving me, I'm loving you. And that's when we've got it going on. Oh, going on. And I was so stranded, I was lost and abandoned. Oh, and I needed another home. Then you flew in my arms. You just flew right into my arms. And when you're loving me, I'm loving you. And I love the prowess and all the things that you do. And it's your flawless soul that beats my stone. And when you're loving me, I'm loving you. That's when we've got it going on. When you're loving me, I am loving you. And I love the prowess and all the things that you do. And it's your flawless soul that bleeds my stone. And when you're loving me, I'm loving you. That's when we've got it going on.
How about Paolo Nutini? He is just incredible to me. All right, my friends, if you've stuck around for this long, I have an extra bonus for you, and it is a big deal. In 2 weeks, I will have the most important interview we have ever had on this show. I am scheduled to interview Mr. Connor Leahy on November 11th for 2 hours. That will be our next show. But in between now and then, we'll be seeing lots of each other. I will see you every day. Please remember, AI risk is not someone else's problem. It is yours and it is mine. And in 2025, we are waking up the whole damn world to the fact it's their problem too. This is the year humanity wakes up to AI risk. We cannot allow 2,000 people to wipe 8 billion people and all living things off the face of this earth. No fucking way. For humanity, I'm John Sherman. I'll see you tomorrow.